we have a very important referendum on May the 5th when people will make a decision about the future voting system. We're asking people, encouraging people to vote no to the referendum and to stick by this very basic principle of one person, one vote, and every vote being of equal value. It gives me great pleasure to be here today, where two parties have come together in the national interest to avert a national disaster. I'm not talking today about my friends in the Liberal Democrats, I'm talking about my friends in the Labour Party. Thank you all for being here. And it's a privilege to welcome you to this historic setting. Toynbee Hall is a great symbol of what building a fair, responsible and cohesive society really means. Years ago, this hall stood at the heart of the British Jewish and Irish communities, and over time its residents played an important part in London's campaign for fairness for ethnic minorities, standing up against fascism in the 1930s and fighting for a fairer, freer and more just society. Today, Toynbee Hall continues to build on that legacy, helping young people and local families from all faiths and all backgrounds to play their part and to succeed in their communities. So it's right that we come here today to talk about an issue which raises serious questions about all of these values and gets right to the heart of what it means to live in a free and fair democracy, the referendum on AV. On May the 5th, Britain faces a massive choice about the future of our democracy. I call it the mother of all elections, because this referendum will affect not just the outcome of the next general election, but for every general election to come. Over the last few months, we've heard many reasons why AV would be wrong for our country. Many of Britain's leading historians have said that AV would undermine centuries of political history. Prominent past and present foreign secretaries have argued that AV would limit our democratic influence in the world. We've even heard many leading Liberals, including Lord Owen, saying they oppose AV because it's the wrong reform for our country. But this week, an even more important argument has taken centre stage. It's an argument about a fundamental British belief, a belief that has been the beacon of British democracy for centuries, a principle that has inspired millions of Democrats around the world, the idea that one person has one vote and every vote is of equal value. For centuries, generations of British reformers have been inspired by that principle. They believe that because each person is equal, no matter who you are or what your background, every person should have an equal vote. It took many years for that principle to become part of our politics. But today that principle stands at the cornerstone of our democracy, enshrined in the current system as one person, one vote. Look around the world and we see that legacy. 2.4 billion people use that voting system. It's the most widely used voting system in the world, and by contrast, only 3 countries in the world use alternative vote. So ask yourself this: what on earth will all these billions of people think if they turn to the mother of all democracies after May the 5th and find that Britain has turned its back on 2 centuries of history? Under AV, instead of one person, one vote, some votes count more than others. Instead of everyone being equal, some people are more equal than others. So it's absolutely vital that we defeat this disastrous, discredited and unfair voting system. As Winston Churchill put it in the 1930s, AV is the stupidest, the least scientific and the most unreal voting system. It means that elections will be determined by the most worthless votes given for the most worthless candidates. And if it becomes part of our democracy, an element of blind chance and accident will enter far more largely into our electoral decisions, and respect for Parliament will decline lower than it is at present. He knew then, like we know now, that AV is totally wrong for our country. But today I actually believe that there's an even bigger argument to make against AV. You see, the problem with AV isn't just that it counts some people's votes more than others, but it's the issue of who these people tend to be. Now, AV is such a complicated and confusing system that I hope you'll forgive me if I explain carefully exactly what I mean. Under AV, the candidate who comes bottom after the first round of voting is eliminated. But the people who vote for that candidate then get another bite at the cherry as their other preferences come into play. So whilst all the people who backed the mainstream candidates only have their first preference counted, all those who picked fringe candidates have in effect another second or third bite at the cherry. It's not just the sheer unfairness of this that gets to me, it's the fact that for some completely arbitrary reason, AV gives more power to those people, fringe voters, monster raving loonies, and yes, fascists, who are voting for precisely the kind of extreme policies most people want to marginalise. You don't need to tell me that this represents a serious danger to our democracy. It means that bigots will be given more power in our politics and extremists will look to gain more influence over mainstream parties. The danger is that under AV, our whole political system will take a giant leap backwards, becoming more warped and disproportionate as fringe voters hold sway. Ladies and gentlemen, you can actually forget about the dinner table test because under AV, bigotry will pass the ballot box test. Now, before I go any further, let me be categorically clear. I am absolutely not saying that this is something anyone in the Yes campaign wants to see. Of course, the people backing the Yes campaign rightly abhor extremism, and I don't for 1 second doubt their sincerity. What I am saying is that yes, they may be sincere, and yes, they may oppose extremism, but by backing AV, they're backing a system which rewards extremism and gives oxygen to extremist groups. The fact is that whichever way you come at it, AV has some very worrying unintended consequences. And we need to make that clear to people before it's too late. What I am saying is grounded in solid evidence. This week, the No campaign published some very important research about the last general election campaign. They showed how it is possible that in 70% of all seats under AV, if you had voted for any of the three mainstream parties, the Conservative Party, the Labour Party or the Liberal Democrats, only one of your votes would have counted. By contrast, the average BNP voter could have had at least 2 votes counted under AV, and in some cases, supporters of the BNP and the National Front would have had as many as 6 of their votes counted. Right here in this constituency, for example, in Bethnal Green and Bow, it would have taken at least 9 rounds of voting to decide the winning candidate. And if you had voted BNP, at least 3 of your votes would have counted here. Now here in this constituency, in Roshanara Ali, you have a fantastic female Asian member of parliament. We may be from different parties, we may have different politics, but I'm proud that it's first past the post that got her there. So it's absolutely clear that AV represents a real and present danger to our democracy. And in particular, I believe that AV risks 3 very worrying things. First and foremost, under AV, there's a real risk that candidates would pander to extremists. Why, you may ask? Because to win a seat, candidates will need to win the support of those whose first choices have already been eliminated, and these are more likely than not to be the BNP. This could have serious repercussions on those constituencies where the BNP vote is bigger than the majority. Take Dewsbury, for example, my hometown, where I was born and raised and where I stood in 2005. I lost by just over 4,000 votes. At the same time, the BNP polled just over 5,000, more than the difference between the top 2 parties. So it's not hard to imagine where AV could lead in places like Dewsbury. More dog whistle politics, more inflammatory campaigns, and more policies which appeal to people's worst instincts rather than to the values of the mainstream. But this is just the start of it. The second risk with AV is that it could give parties like the BNP more legitimacy. Let me be clear what I mean by that. Under AV, voters would be able to register a protest vote without considering the electoral implications, and then transfer back to a mainstream party. The long-term effects are sadly all too clear. more people backing fringe parties because they feel they can, more votes and more long-term legitimacy for the BNP, all adding fuel to the fire and giving the false impression that voting BNP is actually okay. Tied to this problem is another one, more horse trading. Under AB, with hung parliaments more likely, it will be the smaller parties who often hold the balance of power. And just imagine what that would mean for British democracy. Party leaders striking bargains with extremist parties, unsavoury promises and dodgy deals, and meanwhile the representatives of those fringe parties enjoying greater stature and credibility as they swan off to meetings with leaders of the mainstream parties. Now, while I'm on this particular issue, let me address head-on an argument levelled by the Yes campaign. They point to the BNP's position in this referendum and say that Nick Griffin wants to keep first past the post. In response, let me read you this. To continue fighting first past the post elections and securing an ever-dwindling vote is simply a recipe for demoralisation and failure. Those are the words of Nick Griffin after his party's disastrous performance in last year's general election, an election run under first past the post. The point is that you and I know well that there is nothing the BNP say which has any value and it can never be taken seriously. It's all about tactics and deals. And let's be clear, what the BNP really want is PR, proportional representation. Because as Nick Griffin put it, under PR, the BNP could easily fill a bus with BNP MPs. And that brings me to the final point I want to make. Many of those who are campaigning for AB actually don't want AB at all. They see AB as a stepping stone to another change in our voting system whereby we adopt PR. But in the north of England, PR has let in 2 BNP members of the European Parliament in Yorkshire and in the northwest. The fact is that all of the main voting systems, first past the post has the strongest record of excluding extremists from Parliament. So it's absolutely vital that we do all we can to protect this on May the 5th. The point about this referendum is that it's not just a choice about 2 counting systems. It's a choice between different values. Whether it's right that some people should have more votes counted than others, whether it's right that our democracy should give extremists more power, and above all, whether we should abandon our simple, straightforward, tried and tested voting system and replace it with another which is dangerous as well as unfair. So that's why, right here, right now, we need to pull together and fight for our democracy and let the message go out from Toynbee Hall today. We don't just say no to AB, we say yes to our voting system. We say yes to one person, one vote. And when in years to come, people say, where were you when you decided the future of our democracy? What did you do to win that debate? We can all stand up and say, I was there. I was there when we protected our democracy. I was there when we stopped extremists from gaining power. And I was there when we protected one person, one vote. I was there when we said no to AB. Thank you very much.